at that time, 1959, when we shot it, we weren't allowed to show nudity. I mean, he never asked me, and I never assumed or even thought that he would, because we couldn't show it anyway. The problem was what to wear so that it looked like I was nude. I mean, that was the biggest problem of all. Rita Riggs, the wardrobe girl, and I pored over these strip teaser magazines that showed all the different costumes, but none of them worked because they all had whirligigs on them or something. But we were just looking for something that was very simple.
That's when Miss Janet Leigh and I probably became very acquainted, because as a set girl at the time, it was my job to piece together and do a setup with a camera and see what would show.
And she came up with the idea of this plain moleskin, which is you use for blisters. Dancers use it to put over a sore spot because it's adhesive on one side, and then it's a soft, almost flannel-like on the outside, and it's nude. You know, the nude color.
And you cut and you glue, and suddenly, you know, I was very adept with scissors and paste.
You put that over parts of your body, then, you know, everything's copacetic.
The shower scene, as I wrote it, was not broken down into the shots that we would ultimately use. There was no storyboard on it when I wrote it. I just described the fact that she gets into the shower and then someone comes in with a knife and kills her. In the book, it says that her head was cut off. And I wrote enough in my description of the murder scene to make sure that no one thought we were going to cut Janet Leigh's head off. And I don't think that Hitchcock ever really imagined that. But Hitch had very strong ideas about that scene. So at that point, Saul Bass came in and did a storyboard on it.
Over the years, this rumor sprung up that Saul Bass had directed the shower scene.
I have heard that Saul Bass said he directed the shower scene, that he was the one that physically directed it. I want to put that to rest right now. I was on the set every second of every foot of film that was shot on Psycho, and Mr. Bass never directed a scene in that motion picture. Mr. Hitchcock directed every scene in that picture.
Mr. Bass got full credit for what he did, and what he did was brilliant. I mean, his storyboard, I mean, his drawings of how he thought the showers should, you know, the angle. What Mr. Hitchcock, they conferred, and he said, show me what it's going to look like from this angle, and from this, and from that, because what I want to do is make a montage. Show me what it's going to look like so I can get in my mind the flash cuts. And he drew them very beautifully and graphically. Also, his titles were wonderful. But to say that he directed it, I tell you that no one directed that scene except Mr. Hitchcock.
The famous shower sequence of Psycho was shot on a set that was no more than 12 by 12, 12 feet by 12 feet. It was a very small, confined set.
The shower sequence took up 1/3 of my shooting time, actually. I mean, I think I worked 3 weeks on the movie, and the shower sequence took 7 days, 7 shooting days. So that was a good hunk of of my work.
For the assistant director, who was kind of in charge of the schedule and the time and the hours, et cetera, the number of shots we had to do in there, and they weren't difficult for Mr. Hitchcock to direct and to take time. Once we rolled the cameras, it was a matter of seconds of getting the shot. It was up to Jack Russell, the cinematographer, to light each setup and to move the camera around from shooting straight down to straight up to cross angles to into the water. I mean, it was tedious for him and the time that it took to light. And then, of course, we had to have the warm water because we kept running out of that. We had tanks and had to heat them and keep them heated. There were many things we had to do that were behind the scenes. The actual shooting was easy. The water coming out of the shower head was a special rig. And it was made up in the special effects department. It was shot straight at the lens, and the camera was tilted at such an angle that the water never touched the lens. It was, today they've got ways of wiping the water and cleaning it that you don't know. But this was a special shower head. We were one of the first to ever work with a nude photo double, and that was all a secret and a hush-hush thing, and there were signs on the door, and we never allowed a visitor or anything in.
Hitchcock wanted a nude model because he felt that a person who was naked professionally would be easier to deal with than an actress who had no experience being naked in front of hundreds of people. And he brought in a nude model, very nice young lady. It was quite charming to see the two of them standing there talking. Hitchcock here and the naked girl there.
There was a nude model, absolutely, because for several reasons. One, he had to see what density of water and the shower curtain so that you couldn't see whether someone was nude or not. And you can't tell that unless you see someone nude, to know when to cut it off. You know, where you don't see it, where you think what you see, but you don't see it.
Mr. Hitchcock felt that through the shower curtain, the effect of a nude, if they had a stocking or whatever on, that it wouldn't be the same.
Also, there was a scene where he drags the body, wraps the body in the curtain, and then takes it to the car. And I did not do that. But the scene itself was so brilliantly conceived because Mr. Hitchcock brought us to this point where from then on it became what we thought we saw, not what we saw. And he did that with his camera, with the editing, so that the audience finally just in this frenzy of chung, 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 each cut was like a stab of the knife. And eventually the audience said in their mind, this was a knife, that was a knife, and it was a cut. And the cut is even indicative, the word cut, because to them, each cut was a cut. The sound that they used for the stabbing, he had the prop man bring different melons, and you know, he would stab the melons, and Mr. Hitchcock wasn't looking, but he knew what each one was, and he said the kasabi.
The blood on Psycho, that was an area where we did a lot of tests ahead of time. Jack Barron and Bob Dawn, the makeup people, to get the precise, density of the blood. Of course, we were in black and white, so the color didn't make that big a deal, but the density was a problem. He
tested several things. There was movie blood, what they, used for movie blood in black and white. Then there was, I think he tested ketchup, and then he tested chocolate syrup, and he felt that the chocolate syrup read the best.
The swirling of the blood into the drain took some time to get, because they look easy on the screen, but to get them the way Mr. Hitchcock wanted them took some time.
I must tell you, there is a shot in the shower scene that was never used. That is one of the most heartbreaking shots I've ever seen, where the camera pulls all the way up, and we look down on the girl lying across the tub, and her bottom is bare. And there was objections to using that, and perhaps Hitch felt that it wasn't really necessary. Anyway, there was something very tragic about seeing this beautiful figure with the life gone from it.
Probably the most difficult shot for me, and I think technically the most difficult, was the last shot where with the eye, and then when they pull back into this long shot, because at that time they didn't have automatic focus. So when the camera moved, they had to keep focusing, hand focusing as they went back, which was extremely difficult. And for me to get that glazed non-look and hold it was quite difficult. And also because the water was on there, and you know how when a drip of water, it tickles, you know, and so it was maddening. It's like having an itch and not being able to scratch it. There was one point when the camera was far enough away from me where they could not see if I blinked or something, you know, and he snapped his fingers so that I could, you know, relax a little bit. We did that, I don't know how many times. Hilton Green and I tried to remember the exact number of what take it was, but we know it was in the 20s. Contrary to what some of the dialogue is on the Universal tour, sometimes they say that Mr. Hitchcock turned cold water on me in the shower so that I would scream, you know. Well, that's exactly the opposite. He was so considerate of the temperature of the water that I would be comfortable, to the point where it almost caused a problem, because in this scene, I'm draped down with the head in position, and it's very uncomfortable, and the eye, and, you know, it's very, and the difficulties technically. Anyway, finally we're getting something going. It seems to be going right. I didn't blow it. The focus was going right, and the steam from the water had gotten to the moleskin. Now, I could feel the moleskin pulling away from my top part. And so I could feel this. It was just kind of like going, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to do this damn thing again. I really don't want to. And all the guys on the scaffolding, I think they had double duty up there, quite frankly. But anyway, so be it. But there were a lot of guys on the electricians up on the scaffolding. And you couldn't, I knew the camera couldn't see it because I was over the top. I knew the camera couldn't see it from the angle that I was. But I knew that they would get an eyeful. And I said, I'm not going to be modest, you know, let them look, because I'm not going to stop this shot. I am not going to stop this shot. And I didn't, and they did.